Welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Whether you're an athlete trying to perform at your best when it counts the most, a coach or business leader trying to get more out of your team, or someone looking for more personal growth, this is the place for you. This podcast is your map to guide you to the right mindset, systems, and strategies you need to become the best version of yourself. Now, here are your hosts, John Cullen and Brandon Allen.
All right, welcome into the Mental Advantage Podcast, the night you have been waiting for. Dr. Morris Pickens, a.k.a. Dr. Mo, is joining back on the program. Longtime friend of the program.
Absolutely. Just friend in general.
Friend in general, that's right.
Great guy.
Just great guy. Somebody that you, as I said to him before we started recording, Brandon and I would just love nothing more than to sit on a porch down there in Sea Island and just enjoy a glass of lemonade and overlook the golf course and just talk to Mo for a while. It was good to have him back on, huh?
Absolutely. Yeah. And always, great lessons learned with Mo. Just watching his growth and watching his players' growth has been a lot of fun. And we've talked about it before and we really get into it on this episode, and not intentionally where we're just trying to talk about the Netflix, special, but I know you and I have talked about it off the podcast where you can see, and no pun intended, you can see this momentum for Dr. Mo and his players, as well as just the idea of sports performance and sports psychology is really starting to permeate, in every sport, but being able to have some of the access that Netflix provided a couple of months ago with their series there. It's fantastic. And, it's just fun to watch. It's kind of like, when you get on a band early and they're like your band, yes, and you almost kind of like, y'all didn't know. I knew this, yes. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's how I kind of feel about Mo sometimes, is like him and Dr. Brett McCabe. Like it's just cool seeing those guys and their hard work start to pay dividends for all of their athletes that have adopted this. Right. So
yeah, it's so funny, Brandon, because I can't remember. It's been a while ago now, but I'm watching the Golf Channel, and Brett McCabe comes on there, and I think I texted you about it. And then I saw an interview with Keegan Bradley not too long ago, and he references Dr. Mo and says, hey, I was talking to Dr. Mo about this, and I'm like, yes, because I mean, look, and you talk about and just for the listeners, because we're assuming that a lot of the listeners that have been with us from the get-go, but we did a series back 4-episode series with Dr. Mo when we first kind of started taking off, and it's something I'll be forever grateful. I know both of us will be forever grateful to Mo for, because here's somebody that's at the top of his craft. I mean, he's worked with players like Zach Johnson, Stewart Cink, Lucas Glover, Keegan Bradley, Davis Love III, Justin Leonard. And now, here we are just starting out as a podcast. We're like, hey, mind if you come on our show? And not only did he not blink at that, but he says, here's an idea. Why don't I go ahead and come on for 4 different ones?
Yeah, the Mo Grand Slam.
That's right. The Mo Grand Slam. We'll do it associated with the different major tournaments that year. And he really broke down for us, some of the things, the 4 R's, as he calls it: refocus, routine, react, relax. And then also that whole practice and preparation. All of that becomes his Score Better video system, that is a really good system that he's put together that talks about I love how he describes this on their website is learn how to improve every aspect of your golf game without focusing on technique or mechanics, but rather by learning how to excel at managing your thinking. And there's, as I said earlier, on-course thinking, practice and preparation, off-course thinking, 140 plus insightful video lessons, like 4 in-depth video guides. So Mo gets into some of that here, but also Dr. Mo is an author. He wrote a book, The Winning Way in Golf and Life, Learn to Win One Shot at a Time, and then another Learn to Win book about a major. And then finally, as if that's not enough to draw you in, this is somebody whose clients have achieved a combined 30 PGA Tour victories, including 4 majors, 300 amateur wins, and 2 NCAA championships. So when Brandon says guy knows his stuff,
right?
He knows his stuff. I mean, the proof's in the pudding, right?
Mo, at one point, he talks about having a lifetime exemption because if you get 20 wins on tour, the player has a lifetime exemption. Well, Mo has that.
That's right.
Mo has enough dubs and wins under his belt that he gets that lifetime exemption. And again, he's just a wealth of knowledge. And I took another 4 pages of notes while we were talking to him again tonight. And he's so fun to deal with and to get his point of view on stuff. So he's a great one, and can't wait to have him back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, we are going to be off. Speaking of being back, we will not be back next week, but we will be back the following week. So in the meantime, though, we're going to get out of the way, as always, and let you get to the main attraction. So get that pen and paper ready. Here is Dr. Mo Pickens. All right, well, there he is. Dr. Mo is back. And Mo, we're so glad to have you back on the show. Thanks for taking the time to join us tonight.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Well, I tell you what, Mo, I wish I had $1 for every time people say, hey, when are you getting Dr. Mo back on? Because you were and have been a fan favorite for quite a while now. So I know that the listeners will be very happy to have you back.
Well, I appreciate the kind remark. So.
We always tell them that, you're kind of a busy guy. So talk to us a little bit about that. How's life been going? How are things been going for you?
Yeah. It has been busy. The West Coast is kind of like a little bit slower for me. So November to February, but as soon as the West Coast is done, it's full on. I went to all 4 events, in Florida this year, which I normally don't do, but kind of got some guys on different schedules with some of these signature events. And then like Davis Thompson, a rookie, not being, or second year not being in everything. So anyway, but it's been a good year. Had some guys playing really nice lately. Davis Thompson just finished second in Myrtle Beach, and Keegan just finished second at Colonial. So hopefully guys are trending for the summer.
Yeah, I was really pulling for Keegan there in that one at Colonial. I thought that he had a run there right at the right time. I think if he makes that, I think it was maybe if it gets a little bit closer at 18 and gets into double figures there, I was hoping that might put a little bit of pressure,
maybe. I mean, Davis Riley just played so good, and he deserved to win. He played the best all week. So I like it when the guy who plays the best all week wins. So
it makes sense. Hey, speaking of, these tournaments and stuff, I mean, since we've had you on the show, I mean, Full Swing got into that Netflix series. The second season came out and they devoted a whole episode. Of course, that episode 3 was called Mind Games. And it really was a very interesting. And I think in light of everything that just happened this past weekend with Grayson Murray, I think it was interesting to see the mental side of it starting to get more and more prevalent, right? I mean, it's like all of the stuff that they talked about in Mind Games, and just, I think it was a good reminder, not in an unfortunate reminder. I don't want to say good reminder in that aspect, but
right.
Everything that happened, the tragic events this past weekend was definitely a reminder and puts into perspective that these guys have a lot of stuff weighing on them, right? It's not just what we see between the ropes.
Oh yeah. I mean, 100%. And I think, whether it's golf or whether it's football or baseball or basketball or all these professional sports, we think because somebody's on TV that they're just invincible. And, that's not the case. I mean, they are all humans first, and then they're athletes. And just like everybody, they have their good days and their bad days and their up days. And then unfortunately, some of them, struggle with true mental issues that I don't really get into as a performance coach, but are definitely a part of everyday life. And thankfully there are counselors and therapists and that sort of thing out there. And obviously that was a tragedy, learning about the news. I'd just gotten back from Colonial. I was out there and had seen Grayson this past week, and to find that out Saturday morning was obviously very sad. And it's kind of like a traveling circus out there. So you don't really know how to kind of first take it in. And, I think that was just kind of a reminder to everybody is, hey, I mean, this is like, I think Peter Malnati did an interview in one of the, maybe Saturday or Sunday, just talking about, yeah, we're competitors, but it was a reminder of, there's way, way more important things than golf, and your mental health for all of us. It's something that we shouldn't take for granted. And if we're struggling with it, or we see a friend or, coworker, struggling, we should really encourage them, to talk with some people and get some help. So.
Well said. I mean, it's one of those things. I thought a lot about you, for obvious reasons, but one of the things, if the listeners remember when we did the series with you and broke down the 4 R's, and we broke down, kind of a lot of the stuff that you're talking about in your Score Better video system. And we'll get into some of that a little bit later on, but that whole on-course thinking and off-course thinking and all of the things that you have. I was thinking about this because in the Full Swing episode, where you starting to talk about, there's so many people that you take somebody like Joel Damon, for example, and he kind of refers to himself as the lowest ranked player with the most fans. And one of the things that he was talking about was how he is starting to have more and more people behind him. And what he meant by that, I assume, is he's now a father. He's now got, maybe, more than just the agent and the caddy on there or whatever. But these are some of the pressures you're talking about as well, right? It's all that off the course stuff. It's all the, things that we've talked about in the past. He also said, though, which I thought was interesting, is that he was resistant to a sports psychologist. And I was curious what your take on, like, in general, why do you find that most players, when they are resistant, I know a lot are accepting it, but when they are resistant, right, what is usually the reason?
Well, I think, at some level, we all want to believe that we can handle everything in any walk of life, right? And so, and golf being such an individual sport, and especially if you've had enough success to play really good high school golf, or then play college golf, or get on the tour like Joel Damon, for the most part, you've had support along the way, but you're always the one holding the club, and you're always the one kind of making the final read and final club selection. So you're used to being the guy who has the kind of last say, and it's produced a lot of good results. And so I think it's a little bit resistant to be like, hey, I need some help. And I don't really look at it that way, in the sense of like, I never have looked at it like a client of mine is sick and I'm going to fix them. I'm way more of the mindset that, hey, you're probably doing, 80 to 90% of what you're doing. And I just want to come along and see if we can get you 1% to 2% better. And if we can, great. And if not, you'll fire me pretty soon. So,
It's really interesting you said that, though, too, Mo, because like a guy like Joel, who you don't get on the tour if you're not successful, right?
Absolutely not.
I mean, but then to hear, it's really hard sometimes, sometimes humility can hide in self-deprecation, But, one of the things that we've learned from you and some of our other guests is how important that self-talk is. And to hear throughout a round that, oh, you're not good. Like, it's just, it feels, and I think every competitor knows how to identify when things aren't going well, but it just, and again, there's editing and all that involved, but if it's a constant grind and a constant putting yourself down a little bit, it's gotta be tough to be walking between those ropes 4 days out of the week, right?
Oh, everybody's looking at you, everybody's kind of judging you. And at some level, we all want to be liked. And you mistake that if I hit a golf shot good, that means I'm going to be liked. And if I hit a golf shot poor, it means I'm going to be disliked.
Right.
And and maybe some of that's actually true with all the gambling going on nowadays. But,
True.
but, the reality is, most people are there to enjoy a good walk and some social times with their buddies. And they don't really care if you shoot, 68 or 78. It ain't going to make or break their Saturday. Right. So you got to remember that. And, one of the things I always try to encourage my guys and remind them is, hey, this is something you chose to do. And so, like, we got Pinehurst coming up, and that place is going to be, balls out crazy hard, right? But I have, a couple guys that hopefully will end up qualifying. Keegan's already in. But one of the things that I often find myself, especially at that tournament, reminding them is, I'm pretty sure you signed up for the qualifier. Yeah. And so once you're here, you need to make sure you enjoy it, or otherwise next year don't sign up, right? Yeah. But it makes no sense to look forward to something and want to get into something and then not enjoy it once you get there. So I'll probably be having that discussion here in 10 days or so. But yeah, I think, I always tell my kids, meaning my junior players and that sort of thing. And I'm like, look, you're a human being. You're going to have emotions, right? You're going to get angry. If you play with me in a tournament and I 3-putt from 10 feet, I'm going to be ticked off. Right. But I'm going to say, my putting on the 11th hole was atrocious. So it's about my putting and it's temporary, right? Yeah. I'm never going to tell myself that I'm a bad putter because now it's about me and it's permanent. Mm-hmm. So anything that you say negative, you want it to be about the skill and you want it to be temporary. You never want to say I suck or I'm a bad driver or I'm awful at putting. You never want it to be about yourself and make it in kind of like a permanent statement because those things do kind of settle in and create damage kind of down the road.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing there. And I also think when you're talking about all the pressures and the limelight, I thought it was really interesting staying on Joel Damon for a second because I do want to ask you a question about Wyndham Clark. But with Joel, I thought it was interesting that his one of the golf reporters talked about him having to deal with this immediate fame versus having the gradual buildup that somebody like I'll use one of your folks, Zach Johnson, for example, as they kind of climb and start to, win. And now all of a sudden you that fame that comes with that. But as caddy, I thought had a really interesting statement in the series. He said there was so much attention to him all of a sudden that I don't think he was ready for and or wanted. I thought was a really interesting thing there. It's like, yeah, for somebody like Joe Damon, maybe he didn't want that. Like, it seems weird to say, but maybe that's the case.
Well, I think, like in any part of life, there's introverts and there's extroverts in every sport.
Yeah.
And I don't know Joel that well, but what I took from that and I've watched it, like, hey, he kind of like doing his own thing and having some chances and kind of, mastering his craft, but he really wasn't out for, a ton of social media stuff and a lot of publicity. And, and I've worked with guys who are absolutely like that. And they really kind of they want to come out here. They want to be great at their work and they love the competition aspect. So don't get me wrong. They love competing and coming down the stretch and the nerves and the feelings that produces, but they don't really like, the stuff after that. They don't like doing the interviews. They don't like having to go do media every day. They don't want that. And then there's some other guys, just to be honest, who, they love that aspect of it. They like doing the media. They want to do all that. And, sometimes you see guys who will kind of fall in love with that and then forget they got to practice, and
true.
Takes advantage of them, and speaking of Zach, kind of going back to him, I mean, it was weird in the sense he didn't really, I wouldn't say he liked it or disliked it, but he really was not well known. He was on tour in 2004, and then he won again, or he won in 2005. I want to say we started together in 2006. He won in 2007, right? And he won at Augusta, and that was kind of like nobody knew of him before that. And then he won again a month later, that same year. And it's no real shock to me that 2008 was his worst year.
Wow.
And it was because well, I'm not sure. What is the top 10 player in the world supposed to be like?
Right.
And he was better at kind of staying in his own shell and kind of grinding and that sort of thing when he was ranked 40th and 50th in the world. And then in 2008, he was having to do a lot of media, and he had much more attention. He was always in the premier pairings, playing with Tiger and things like that. And you're not even really consciously trying to do this, but you get this sense that okay, I cannot miss a shot now, or I can't miss a putt because I'm supposed to be at this level.
That's right.
And that does make some sense in other sports, because it's not that guys don't have slumps in other sports, but once you get to the level, of a top 10 player in the NBA, you usually don't drop to 50th the next year. You might drop to 12th or 15th.
Yeah.
But on the PGA Tour, you can go from, a chance to win the FedEx Cup to fighting to keep your card.
That's so crazy. Yeah,
and
the
so
margin of error.
There's more volatility in that. One, because it's an individual sport, and two, just because of all the skills involved. And there's really no other sport, I don't believe, where you have to be so great at so many different things on a more consistent basis, and so, but yeah, it's that kind of immediate fame can sometimes, you see a lot of guys, not two things come with that. The immediate fame can be a burden, but the immediate confidence is very common to see a guy play really good in the Ryder Cup, who was on the border and then take off, i.e. Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah.
You got to, you have to remind people, hey, 3 years ago, he had not won a single tournament.
It's so crazy.
You forget that.
Right.
And so anyway,
So Mo, when that kind of thing happens, though, to where you have all of these things now that have been injected into your life, that aren't controllables, right? You cannot, you don't know how the media is going to respond to you. There's so many things. As a mental coach for these guys, do you really talk to them about compartmentalization? Do you talk about, hey, let's not forget control the controllables? How do you help them navigate all that newfound attention? Right.
Well, I mean, one of the things is, hopefully we've been together for a little while. I mean, they know kind of the triangle and the on course, prep off course. And most of this kind of realm is happening off the course. And so, some of the time, the biggest discussion is simply about time management and about understanding, what is the priority and how you're going to go about it, and getting, much better at scheduling, because up until that point, I mean, the biggest thing you had to do in your schedule was make sure your caddy was there on time and show up for your tee time. But now, now you got to do the media stuff. Now you likely have more sponsors, so you might have more obligations. You might have a dinner Tuesday night, or, that sort of thing. And so you really have to manage that, and or have people help you manage that and stay on top of that. And there's a couple different ways to do that. I mean, he may have done one, but it would have been extremely rare. Vijay Singh's way to do it was, hey, I'll talk to you Sunday after I win the tournament. but I'm not talking to you until then. Right now, that probably doesn't make you really happy with sponsors and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So most guys are not doing that anymore. But I think the biggest thing that we get into is kind of time management and their priorities. And because you can play incredible golf and then become a rock superstar, and then your marriage can crumble.
Right. Yeah.
You're not paying attention to the priorities that you've set in your life. And it's a balancing act. But I would say, and I try to make sure that I check in on those type of things, because most of the time when I'm at Pinehurst in a couple of weeks, I mean, we were going to be talking about their putting routine, and we're going to be talking about how to attack number 4, and we're going to talk about communication with their caddy and all those things. But one of the things that I'll be checking in on is just, hey, how you doing? Like, what's going on that nobody out here can see?
I love that question.
Tell me what's going on with your 6-year-old that nobody knows about, or whatever it is. So
I love that question. And look, you brought up Scotty Scheffler, and I got to tell you, I mean, one of the most impressive things about that guy is not only his play now, and that's an amazing stat you just talked about a minute ago, but it's also, I feel like he probably is the poster child for that separation you just talked about, that having your priorities, having everything isolated, and a clear understanding of that golf is not my identity. It's just something that I play. I'm just a golf pro. That's not going to define me later in life. That's not my, but he really separates it. And I got to tell you, with all of the things that happened at the PGA Championship, I mean, at the time that we're airing this, all of the charges were just dropped with Scotty Scheffler this afternoon. But I think back to that, I guess it would have been Friday, that round 2, where he wakes up in the morning, you have all the incident happens. Is arrested. He's cuffed. He's put in a cop car, taken down to the station, all that stuff. Then they go out and fire a 5 under, which was the second best round of the tournament, by the way. Like, the mental toughness to do that is amazing. Were you as surprised as the rest of us?
I don't think I was really surprised. I mean, I know Scotty reasonably well. Yeah. I'm good friends with Teddy, his caddy, and known him for years, and we give each other a lot of grief. If I see him at Pinehurst, if I see the two of them at Pinehurst, my common saying is, Scotty, I hope you have a great day. Or, Scotty, I hope you have a nice week.
Yeah.
And I don't, so anyway, but but it didn't surprise me in the sense of, I knew if he could get back on the golf course, and even if he was running late, if he could get past kind of the,
security
tempo, the rhythm of getting to the first tee, once he got to the second or third hole, that he would probably be fine. So, cause I think he's very calm there. Obviously he's very good, and he's so good at, like, hey, I mean, that has nothing to do with what I'm doing now, and I'll deal with that later. And so it really didn't surprise me. And then it also didn't surprise me that he played for Saturday, just because I think all the adrenaline left, all the energy, and I saw him out there at Colonial, but I didn't really get to speak to him. But I'm sure probably the biggest sensation he probably had Saturday was to get on the range and have no legs and be like, oh, I'm in trouble.
Right.
And
it's a really good point you bring up there, because you can, you see sometimes the emotional piece of it and the toll it takes. I mean, that was the other thing about that Full Swing episode, was all of these off the course stuff and all of the build up, and like with Joel Damon, the one thing about that episode was when him and his caddy are finally having almost like in real time, a come to Jesus talk with each other, a crucial conversation about, this is it. Like, I'm tired of watching you go around the course every round like this or whatever. and they were both emotionally, you could tell visibly emotional or whatever. And I thought, wow, how much of a buildup had taken place to get to this point, right? Is that usually how folks like yourself get involved, Mo, is because a caddy or an agent or somebody says, hey man, we can't do this anymore?
Right. A lot of times it is. I would say, especially at that level, a lot of times some of those pros are just so focused on going to the next event and, getting their numbers right that week and understanding the grass that week and that sort of thing, that they can't see, the forest for the trees. And so, and it takes somebody usually struggling, and either they know they're struggling really bad, or it takes somebody else who's seeing how they're struggling from the outside, their agent or their trainer or their coach, to say, hey, we could make this better, and so, yeah, I mean, the only person that, maybe some younger player, the only professional player I've ever had that hired me that said, hey, I'm playing really, really good, but I just want to see if I can get better, was Zach. And
wow, is that right?
Yeah. And everybody else that's ever hired me has always come with a problem. Yeah. He was the only one in 2006. We had played some practice rounds with some other guys, and so he had been around me, and he had 4 top 5s, and he's like, I know I'm playing really good, I'm really close, but I think, this might be the piece that can help me kind of get over the hump. And I proceeded him not have a top 10 9 months. And so luckily I wasn't fired, but and then luckily 2 months after that he won Augusta. But most people, that's not their mindset. Most people is, unless there's clearly something broken, then I don't want to upset the apple cart kind of thing. And like almost every other player, I would say either came because of a coach or a caddy or an agent, so
that's interesting though, because I think it speaks back to what we were talking about earlier, because one of the things that for sure players feel, that guy that's on your bag needs you to be performing, because they have responsibilities, they have a family. So now all of a sudden, like we were saying earlier, if I'm the guy with the club in my hand, I now exponentially have more responsibilities outside of just me and my family, right? That becomes
100%. We've had very honest discussions where at times, depending on how many people are on a team, we've gathered, the 4 people or the 6 people, and just all basically said, look, we're going to be fine. You're not making any putt for us. You don't need to hit any fairway for us. You need to go out there and be as self-centered, meaning focus on what you're doing, not selfish, rude to others, but you need to be self-centered and focused on what you're doing. And if you miss a putt, quote unquote, and it cost me $10,000, you'll make it up somewhere else. I ain't worried about it.
Right. And a lot of times it's the caddy that is the one who is that we talk all the time about in mental performance, is like that, being able to have that self-assessment. But sometimes on the course, to Brandon's point, like that caddy, they've got that special bond, and they know when you're at your best. They know when it's working good. Like I thought that was another interesting thing about Full Swing was, when I think it's Joel Damon's caddy, somebody had asked him, what's he like when he's doing good? And he said, well, when he's at his best is when he hits a bad shot and he recognizes right away, this is what I did. This is what I need to do differently on my next shot to fix that, to prevent that from happening or whatever. Like that's at his best, because at his worst, it's when the negative self-talk comes in. There's actually a clip of him in there where he hits a shot in a round of golf and he's like, I suck or whatever. Like immediately, like the audio picked up on that. And I was thinking, look, I'm no Dr. Mo, but I can even tell that's not the best way to handle that situation.
Yeah. So. And I mean, yeah. And the best caddies are really good at kind of reading their player and knowing, if they need a kick in the butt or need a pat on the back, or they just need a joke to distract them, or, what it is. And that's a very tough role. Because you're not the one holding the club, but you have a lot of influence over what club is being hit and what shot selection. And then at the tour level, I mean, there's so many things that go on just to hit a shot 154 yards that most people aren't really thinking about, like how the ball is going to land on the green. What's the grain like where this is going to land? If this spins the wrong way, what's going to happen? I don't want to leave myself with this shot because this type of short game shot's been giving me trouble lately. I mean, it's not just like point and shoot. And when the guys are good, though, I mean, a clear indication of kind of where a guy is how much he's thinking about golf off the golf course. If he's playing good, he's not thinking much golf off the golf course. If he's playing bad, that's all he can think about is golf off the golf course. Right.
It's so
and so one of the things that sometimes you have to fake yourself, but one of the things that I really try to get my players to do is to have little physical kind of reminders to help them mentally. And so like, hey, when you take your shoes off, when you put your clubs in the car, whatever, when you do this, like you're done with golf.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you don't need to go think about golf. You don't need to go discuss golf. Like when you're done, you're done. And then the next time we're going to engage in golf is tomorrow when you're getting yourself mentally ready and you're getting into your own little locker room and you're kind of doing your deal and you're 5 minutes by yourself, which I do want all my players to do. That's the next time we're going to kind of engage in golf, if you will.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, I think that is so good because one of the things that from your webpage I pulled, speaking of Zach Johnson, is there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen, right? That's bad out there that, one of my favorite Dr. Mo sayings of all time, I still use it all the time with work, is invite the challenge. It's always going to be, I feel like I'm not a tattoo person, but if I ever got a tattoo, that would probably be one of the tattoos is invite the challenge. But, Mo, I was looking at your webpage, and I saw an article that you had written about where's your locker room, and you were talking about Zach and some of his kind of preparation for competitive rounds. And I love a line I'm going to read from there. Is it says, getting himself mentally prepared to focus on what he wants to focus on for the upcoming day and being mentally prepared for the adversity that he knows is sure to come at some point over the next 4 to 6 hours. I love how you say this with certainty, right? It's not if this is going to happen, it's going to happen. It's just how you're going to now bounce back from that. Could you talk a little bit about how some of our listeners can do their own kind of preparation for that in their own like locker room space? Yeah.
So really your locker room is doesn't have to be a physical place like that. And sometimes it might not be able to be the same. Sometimes it could be like in the shower, if you're going to shower every morning, and it doesn't take a whole lot of conscious thought to do that. But and really what you're trying to do there is just one, accept that the best attitude in the world is no good if you come up with it on the first tee. So you're going to need to do a little bit of mental prep so that you can get your self-talk going in the right way, so that you can get your body language to stay positive after you hit a poor putt and those types of things. But, you're really building up kind of mental resilience in this locker room. And it could be driving to the course. I don't like to have songs in my head. Some people love to have songs in their head, but when I play in competition, I always turn the radio off in the morning, driving over to wherever I'm going, because I don't want to get a song stuck in my head. And so some people like that a lot, but so usually when I'm driving to the course, that's when I'm kind of just talking to myself about whatever it is. And it might be that I'm going to have good tempo. It might be that I'm going to swing within myself if I'm playing against some college kids that are going to hit it 50 yards by me. It could be different things. And then usually we would write these somewhere that are visible to you in your yardage book, right? And even if you don't use a yardage book, put them on your glove. And so one of the things is, I'm not an artist at all. But so it'd be basically like a semi block on my glove, but basically that means cargo ship. And here at St. Simon's, we have these huge cargo ships that go by, and they carry like 4,000 cars.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it's blowing 5 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, they're not going to change course. Like, this is where I'm going and this is what I'm doing. And unless we have a named hurricane and they have to veer off and go to Jacksonville, they're going to stay on course. Right. And then you have these little dingy sailboats out there that, you know, some of the tourists come here and they get in, and any little puff of wind or the sea gets a little rough and they're all over and they're headed toward the rocks, and they really have almost zero control over it. Right. So you want to be a cargo ship. You don't want to be a little dinghy. Right. And you want to be like, all right, this is what I'm doing. Now, I don't know what scores are going to result from this, but I'm going to have great routines. I'm not going to get technical, and I'm going to enjoy hitting every shot or whatever it's going to be. And those are going to be my keys. So you really want 2 or 3 keys. And those are things that you're just going to kind of keep referring back to over and over and over, regardless, because we already know for the majority of people that I'm dealing with, you know, and they can shoot in the 70s. And a lot of your listeners can. Some of them you can't, but that's okay. But even it doesn't really matter your score. Whatever kind of like block you're in, that's what you're going to shoot. So most of the people I deal with, they're going to make a 3, 4, and 5 for 85% of the holes they play for the rest of their life. I mean, it's just not that big a deal. You're going to make a 3, 4, 5. If you make more 3s, it's going to be closer to the 60s. If you make more 5s, it's going to be closer to the 80s. So just understanding that, you got to go out and realize, okay, well, if I go 3, 4, 3, and I tell this to all my high school kids, that's like, hey, here's your self-talk when you start 3, 4, 3. Like, oh man, my teacher's so good. He knows what he's talking about. That time with Mo was really good. And my girlfriend smoking hot, and you're in this place. Yeah. And you start off 5, 4, 5, and you're like, I'm not sure my teacher knows what he's talking about. That time with Mo was a waste. And oh, my parents are driving me crazy. And the reality is you can be 2 over through 3 and still play really good. And you can be 200 through 3 and still play poor. So you have to be able to go from the 3rd green to the 4th tee as a cargo ship and pretending that the 4th hole is the first hole no matter what. But that takes mental preparation. You're not going to do that just because you want to do that, because you've grown up in a culture and in golf vernacular where everybody talks about, this is how many I'm under par through this many holes, or I just missed this putt for bogey. Or, you know, Nick Watney, one of my guys, he's a great guy. He used to literally write on his glove 3, 4, 5, and then an S. And the S stood for shut up. Just make your 3, 4, 5, shut up, and go to the next hole. And that would be a good thing for a lot of the listeners probably to do. You know, nobody cares that you missed that putt, or you should have made that up and down, or whatever.
Such good stuff.
It's great stuff. The problem is, I think my glove, if someone got a hold of it, they'd be like, oh, look, it's a family of snowmen. 888. And move on.
Yeah. Yeah. Take the S is still shut up. But just shut up and keep moving.
Yeah. Keep moving.
Yeah.
Or it's
Mo,
speed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I will say this. Ever since we had you on the show for the first time and did that series we did with you, I look at golf differently now, because to the point you just made, you know, I used to love watching boxing, because I always loved watching boxing, because there's a point, being somebody who's involved in mental performance and really loves to follow that. There's a point in any boxing match where somebody's just getting pummeled a little bit, you know, and they have that decision point where they're either going to give up or they're going to find a way to turn this thing around. And I now look at golf the same way. It's like when I see stretches where somebody's towards the top of the leaderboard and all of a sudden they bogey that hole inevitably, because, you know, that's going to happen, as we talked about, that adversity. I like to look and see as their routines. I pay attention to their breathing. I pay attention to how they're, and, you know, we just talked about Scotty Scheffler a minute ago. And even this weekend, when it looked like he might be able to make a little bit of a run there after the front nine and the start of the back nine, he'd make a bad shot. And he was definitely not Scotty Scheffler like this weekend, especially on Sunday. But, you know, he made a bad shot, but he's smiling. He's like, you know what I mean? Like it's different, because then you see other people. And now granted, I'd love to get your take on this, because as I was watching it, I was thinking, well, it's really easy for Scotty Scheffler with the success he's had to be able to smile some of that stuff away, right? Because he's like, look, at the end of the day, I'm still Scotty Scheffler. I'm still pretty daggone good. Some of those other guys that maybe are up there for the first time, like Riley, for example, has only won once on the tour, and that was with a partner in a match play type of a thing. I wanted to see how he responded, but he actually responded pretty well too. I felt like because his caddy was having some good dialogue with him. But I am curious, like your take on that. Like I look at the routines, how they bounce back, how they level set, but I also look at somebody like Scheffler and think is it just routine, or is he just, it does help when you're one of the tops in the world?
Well, I mean, I think you don't get to the top without battling through adversity.
Yeah.
So I think you do have confidence that you've kind of been down this road before and faced adversity and kind of overcome it, so you can draw on that. But I think you also, there's a point, and sometimes it can happen younger, sometimes it can happen later. But the reality is, just like in boxing, you probably think you're invincible until, Mike Tyson said, you get punched in the mouth, right?
Right. That's right.
And at some point, for everybody that happens. And then you realize, hey, these other guys are pretty good too. And I can't just dominate like I could when I was younger or whatever. And obviously boxing is a little bit different because that's direct competition and golf is indirect. But still, there comes a point in the sport of golf where you realize mistakes are going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. And am I going to deal with this like a professional, or am I going to continue to act like I'm 15? And we might have some great mature 15-year-olds listening to this, and I hope so, and that'd be great. But most high school players just don't have the wherewithal to kind of really appreciate how important the mental game is to their overall performance. And, one of the things that I explain to them is we're kind of going through, and hopefully the kind of listeners can visualize this, but there's really only 4 outcomes in golf. Okay. There's good execution and good result. Good execution, bad result, bad execution, good result, and then bad execution, bad result. That's really your only 4 options. And most people play golf where good is the only thing that makes them happy. And you have to learn how to play golf where bad is the only thing that makes you upset. I mean, literally the tournament coming up in Pinehurst, the U.S. Open, will be a test of who can withstand a consistent number of good shots that end up in a bad spot and keep coming back and not let it get them down and not lose their cool and not lose their composure and not get impatient. And that's really, what that tournament does is it tries to see, okay, who can mentally be the toughest and keep getting up off the mat, to use the kind of boxing, because you're going to get knocked down some. You just can't get knocked out. You can't make it quad, right? But you need to expect to get knocked down. You just got to keep getting back up. And that takes preparation, and it takes practice, and it takes being a professional to realize it's okay to get knocked down, No,
so. I think it's really, really good stuff. Before we get into, because you just started talking about some of the tips and some of the things that you focus on with young players, and gosh, I mean, if the listeners if they have somebody involved in golf, even if you don't have somebody involved in golf, I think there's lots of lessons you can take from Score Better video system. And I want to dive into that here in a minute. Before I do, I want to ask you one more question about that I was thinking about recently. So for those listeners who missed some of your earlier episodes, you received your PhD in sports psychology, University of Virginia, go Wahoos, in 1995. And you focus a lot of that research on, consulting interests around golf psychology, specifically on the acquisition of putting confidence. And I think about a lot of guys that are out there, weekend warriors, so to speak, or even maybe play more than a couple of times a week. How do you become a more confident putter, or even player in general? Like, what are your tips for some of these guys?
Well, I think, confidence is a funny word, and a lot of parents use it erroneously, and to be just blunt. And they tell their son or their daughter to be confident and don't think about it and just go have fun. And that's really, it might be encouraging, but that's not the best advice, to be honest, right? Because to tell somebody to just be confident, doesn't really help them, because there's not an action that is necessarily correlated with confidence. And some people take confidence from their practice. Some people take confidence from their clothing. Some people take confidence from what happens on the range. I mean, there's so many different things. And from the fact that you're not going to go blank. I mean, we can think way faster than we can talk. And I'm not going to get into the kind of neuroscience of that, but just to think that you're going to just kind of shut your brain off and not think anything is not going to happen, especially under pressure. And you're not going to do that just from kind of willpower, like, I just won't think anything. I'll just walk up here and hit this putt. So kind of understanding that, it's really about where you place your confidence. And what I tell players all the time is they don't have to be confident in the outcome. They have to be confident in the preparation and their routine specifically that will, on a consistent basis, produce the outcome they're looking for. So this just gets into a couple of C words if we can. But so commitment means I know what I want to do. So in golf, it means I know where I want to hit the ball, and something else. But it means commitment means I know what I want to do. Confidence means I know I can pull that off. And there's most of the time, if we're honest, you can't know that you can pull something off, because in golf, you can hit a shot and then get a wind gust, or we can roll 3 balls down a perfect putter and 2 go in the hole and 1 gets bounced off line. So confidence, meaning I know exactly where this ball is going to end up, is not something you want to kind of really put your effort into. And then comfort means I feel at ease over the ball, or I feel at ease in this situation, right? And you can still perform really great without being comfortable. Keegan Bradley used to text me all the time when we first worked together, hey, I wasn't comfortable out there today. And I text him back, hey, I don't really care. And he goes, not the goal. Right? And so it really comes down to, for me, and for the way I teach kind of athletic performance, is you must be committed. You must know what you want to do, and don't back yourself into a corner that you have to be confident or you have to be comfortable, because that's just not true. But if we are talking specifically about confidence, because sometimes we can get lost in just, words and vernacular, the confidence is where you place it. And so you place your confidence in your routine, and then you trust your routine to hit the shot for you. Right. Yeah. And that's really what you're doing is I'm putting my confidence in my routine, and my routine will hit the shot for me. And, talking about Scotty and kind of some of the interviews he's given about what defines him and where he puts his confidence. And obviously he puts his confidence in his faith, but even in sports, what he talks about is he puts his confidence in his preparation, and that's where he draws confidence. So if he hasn't been prepared and he hadn't done his work, then he's not going to lie to himself, and he knows he might have to manage it better, that he can't be as confident that he can pull off certain things. But if he's done his preparation, he puts his confidence in his preparation that, okay, when I go to hit this 8-iron, 164 and have a little bit of draw spin, I can do that type thing. So, that's kind of the way I think about, but you almost need to be clear when you're talking, especially to young athletes, and you're talking about this concept of confidence. One is, what does it mean, and where are we talking about placing it? Because that can really kind of help them understand, they can focus on, because at the end of the day, and we talked about this back in some of the original ones, but at the end of the day, right, you have to learn how to take results and get those out of your mind and focus on the controllable actions that are going to lead to those desired results, as opposed to just focusing on the desired results. That doesn't usually accomplish anything. And, like I tell the high school students, look, you don't walk around for 2 days thinking I want to make 100 on biology tests. I want to make 100 on my biology tests. That's not going to help you at all. Right? It's your preparation that's going to help you. And you got to do the same thing in sports.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's one of those things you made me think when you're talking about that routine, especially with putting. For example, there's a great video clip, and guys, go to the website, drmolearntowin.com. We're going to put that in the show notes as well, but there's so many good, there's a couple of video clips on there of this type of thing. There's one where one of I think it's an amateur player, somebody is working through their routine from a putting standpoint, and really good stuff because you talk to some of the 4Rs during that, which is really good. And you kind of lay that whole thing out there. I know with the system outline in Score Better video system, you've got the on the course thinking, practice and preparation. So on the course thinking is when you get into your 4Rs there, refocus, routine, react, and relax, and then practice and preparation. And then the off the course thinking. Talk to us a little bit about what can some of the listeners count on when they get signed up for that system.
Yeah. So, I mean, really what this program is, and this came about, to be very honest, this was a program that I first developed for my tour players during COVID, because we didn't know how long we were going to be apart. And so every day I sent them basically a 1 minute with Mo video. And it was almost like, hey, this is a golf ball. And we really went back to the very beginning and started with, okay, these are the 3 parts: on course, practice, and prep, off course. They had all heard it before, but we tend to forget things. And so we just kind of started going through that. But in the program that's online, really what this is the easiest way to think about it. This is a mental training program. Just like you have a physical training program, or if you're trying to increase your speed, or if you're trying to increase your batting in baseball or any sport, you're like, okay, hey, I'm going to go through this kind of training program. And so really what this is a mental training program. And you get videos, you get like 6 to 7 videos every month. They're grouped either in on course, practice and prep, or off course. Most of them are in the kind of 5 to 6 minute range. There are a couple longer videos in month 2, like 30 to 40 minutes, that really take you through the whole kind of touch points of that area, whether it's on course or practice or whatever. But so you get these videos, and in the video, it's basically me explaining whatever the concept is, whether it's your routine or whether it's how to play a certain game to work on your short game or whatever it is. And there's some notes in there. And then what I've really found, because it's been going on for about 2.5 years now, and I've had a lot of students have success with it. And a lot of people come see me, and that's great. There's no substitute for getting together in person. But this program, what it helps the most is retention. Because when people come see me, we have a good experience, but that's like going to a concert or going to a football game. And like, it's fun, but like, okay, well, the real key is how much do you retain of that? And so this program helps that. And what I've come to as what I think right now is I've kind of decided on is what I want students to do is get the program. You get the 5 to 7 videos, you watch them. It's going to take you, let's say, about an hour to watch all of them at one time. You put it away for 10 days. You watch it on day 10 or 11, the whole thing, all 6 or 7 again. Then you put it away for 10 days, day 20. And then on day 30, your next month's coming. So day 1, day 10, day 20, you're watching the same videos. That's your 3 hours of mental training. And that really gets ingrained in how you think. And so it's not like remembering what Mo said. This just becomes how I think as a golfer. Mm-hmm. And over time, 3 months, 4 months, especially once you get into year 2, you just won't go back to how you used to think on the golf course. And you'll be so in tune with, oh, well, this is what I do when I get in trouble, or this is what I do when I start hitting it poor, or this is what I do when I start going too fast. And you don't really have to remember the notes. It's just, that's who you have become as a golfer. And there's some videos in there for parents as well, just because one of the things I see dealing with a lot of junior golfers is just understanding their role and understanding. I believe most parents have great intentions. Just sometimes we don't go about it the best way, myself included. And so really what the videos for the parents are like, hey, here's how to deal, with your kid before a competitive round. Here's how to interact with them. And then, hey, here's how we're going to go out and have fun as a family when they just shot 94 and played terrible. And what you should expect of them and what you don't want to yeah, we're still going to go have a nice dinner and we expect you to be professional, but I'm not going to nag you with questions about the chip shot you chunked on the 4th hole. Right?
It's a skill and it's temporary, right?
Yeah. And so just, but the program, I think has been well received. A lot of my competitive players have really enjoyed it in the sense of just like, I don't think the way I used to think. And so, you know, because everybody talks about mental toughness and everybody talks about wanting to think better. But I mean, unless you actually know what the nuts and bolts are to go do that, it just becomes this kind of like nice phrase, like, hey, you need to get mentally tougher. Like, okay. I mean, you know,
right. I'm glad you said that, because that is one of those things that people, I think, they think, oh, well, or all I got to do is go work with Dr. Mo or go work with this person or whatever. I'm going to, like, you know, he waves a magic wand and I become mentally tough too. Right. Like, and it doesn't work that way either. But it is one of those things we hear grit and resilience and all these words thrown around. And it's like, all of this stuff takes work. And guess what? It's not linear. You're going to have some loops in this. I mean, you know, just because you think you have it figured out, you might have it figured out this year, and 6 months later, you don't have it figured out. But guess what? It starts over. Yeah,
100%. I mean, we literally had this conversation, and, you know, this past week, Keegan Bradley finished tied for second. He lost in the playoff to Grayson Murray at the beginning of the year in Hawaii, right? And then after that, he didn't play that good. And so we had a very honest discussion last Tuesday night at Colonial, and he's like, you know, I just got a little bit out of sorts. Like, it's not like I tried to do this, but it was almost like I had this sense that I got it. Like, I'm mid-30s. I know how to play this game. And he said, and then sure enough, as soon as you think you got it, you know, it kind of leaves. And part of that is he got away from doing some of the things that he knows he needs to be great at, you know, whether that's his routine stuff or whether that's, you know, acceptance or whether, I mean, there's lots of different factors that all athletes get into, but you never have it. No. You might have it for a night, but you got to show up the next day, you know, and there's this great, I think I saw it on Instagram, that thing that Kobe talking about, like, you know, you got to show up the next day, and you don't have it. You never have it. Right. And you know, one of the things I try to remind them, and it's a cliche, but I mean, you're never as good as people say you are, and you're never as bad as people say you are. Right. You're just, you know, you're at this level, and we can keep getting better. And in golf, specifically in golf, one of the things, you know, a guy will have some good things and they'll have some good things happen. And, I'll be like, hey, do you have 20 wins on tour yet? No. Okay. Well, then you don't have a lifetime exemption. So, I mean, there's only like 6 guys, and I don't see your name on that list. So let's get back to work.
That's right.
You know,
hey, what, the last minute or two here, what is, you know, I know you work with so many different players at different levels or whatever, and I'm not going to ask you to pick which you prefer better, you know, but are there things working with those young amateurs that you really enjoy more, maybe even than working with the pros?
Well, yeah, I mean, I like different aspects of all of it. You know, I mean, one of the things I love with good young amateur players like 15, 16, 17, just being able to control the ball, that sort of thing, guys and girls. The girls game has gotten so much better in the last 10 years, speed and what they can do and control and trajectory from even kind of, you know, earlier in my career. But I really love, just seeing somebody like get a concept, apply it in competition, right? And then send me a text saying, hey, you know, you wouldn't believe how bad I started today, but I remember we talked about cargo ship and I turned it around, and I normally would have shot 44. And today I hung in there and shot 38. Wasn't a great score, but I did really good. That's the kind of thing I love is people getting the concept and then going to apply it in competition and realizing like, oh, this does work, you know, because one of the things for younger, amateurs, players, just kids. I mean, I did this thing a while back where we had this kind of like panel or whatever. And one of the questions was like, if you could teach a 20-year-old, if you could tell a 20-year-old anything, what would you tell them? And I told them that their self-talk is the most critical thing in their life. Right. And that they just don't pay enough attention to it. But your self-talk is like breathing. I mean, you have to breathe to stay alive physically. You have to learn how to talk to yourself in the right way to stay alive mentally. Right. And you just really want to make sure that you're working on improving and how you're going to go about that, and hang around people that talk that way. And you don't have to be ugly about it, but disassociate from people, that all they do is talk negative.
Yeah.
Just like, hey, I'm not going to hang out with that person. That's not good. You wouldn't hang out with people that are doing physical things that are bad for their body. Don't hang out with people that are doing mental things that are bad for their body.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's a really powerful there at the end, because you're spot on. I mean, and it's such good stuff. I mean, goodness gracious, you're the best. I tell you, we love having you on, and I'm always going to be as biased as they come. But when I'm watching Full Swing, the whole time I kept saying, like, yelling at TV, "Go talk to Dr. Mo. You better get." It's like I was wanting to text Joel Damon if I had his phone number. I'd be like, "Hey, I got somebody you need to go talk to." So,
well, I
always,
appreciate that.
Yeah, for your time, you are always such good information that I know a lot of the listeners can go out and apply. I am playing tomorrow, so I'll go and apply some of this stuff tomorrow.
There you go.
It probably won't be as effective as it was for Keegan.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear. Hey, Mo, if you get a text from John around 3:30, ignore.
Okay.
I will have invited the challenge, Mo, and the challenge will have won. That's the difference. Yeah.
Well, that's all right. You get to come back on Friday.
That's it.
Right. That's right. Well, Mo, we can't thank you enough, as always. And and best of luck with everything. We're going to put everything on the website there, and then also have safe travels to Pinehurst, and
for sure.
Yeah, getting up there and getting everything done. So thanks again, and we'll get you back on here soon.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mo. All right, be well, buddy.
Right. See you, Brandon. Bye-bye.
Want to provide feedback or stay up to date with the show? Visit our Instagram page at Mental Advantage Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@mentaladvantage.net. To have John Cullen work with you or your team, please write to him at john.cullen@mentaladvantage.net. Thanks for listening to today's episode.